Gemara Sanhedrin says there was once a man who was. The Gemara says, "Ma'isabod amechad shenosan einov biisha achas." He was Sanhedrin daf ayin hey v'hela libotina. He became lovesick, what we call lovesick. Ubo v'shalo l'rofa. They asked the doctors, "What should he do?" The guy's lovesick. What do you have to do? Nothing can do for him unless they live together. Well, he'd better die. Tamod l'fanav haruma, stand in front of him so he can look at her. Yomus vel tamod l'fanav haruma. Tisaper imo mecher ageder. Let her, she could talk behind the fence. You'll hear her voice. Have a little conversation from behind the fence. Yomus velo tisaper imo mecher ageder. I mean, this guy was going to be really dead. She said, he's got to die. She can't talk to him. So the Gemara says, why not? I mean, the guy's in critical condition. Why can't the guy's lovesick? He's critical condition, and all it would take was a conversation with the young lady behind the fence. That's all it would take. And the Gemara says, Shelo Yehu Benos Yisrael Prutzos Barayos. The Benos Yisrael should not be parts in arayos. So the Gemara says, okay, very extreme case. And I think that there's a very, very big Musar Haskell here for anybody who wants to get involved in kiruv v'chokim, which is that there's a first rule. First rule in kiruv v'chokim is Avram mekarev es ha'anoshim, Usar mekarev es ha'anoshim. Avram is the car of the men, Sar is the car of the women. I was asked to speak about the do's and don'ts of kiruv, and we're going to speak at least about the don'ts. And it says clearly, Avram mekarev es ha'anoshim, Sar mekarev es ha'anoshim. The first rule in kiruv v'chokim is that kiruv has to be done properly. Aaron Kotler said kiruv not done properly is richuk. If kiruv v'chokim, and in our days kiruv krovim, kiruv of anybody, and a person does kiruv, which means drawing near, and does not do it properly according to the proper Torah hashkafa, so that kiruv is no longer kiruv. That kiruv is what's called richuk. That is distancing. That's not drawing a person near. I know personally of at least 7 divorces in the kiruv world, a couple of people in prison, and none of it was for embezzling. And therefore, I think that a person has to know that the pitfalls when a person goes into kiruv v'chokim, there are rules. There are very hard and fast rules. The first rule in kiruv v'chokim is that there's a protocol. There's a proper halachic protocol. There's a young man who was on a plane once, and it was actually a bacher that I knew from yeshiva. He was on an airplane. He made up his mind before he got on the plane that he was either going to sleep, eat, or learn the entire way from here to America. It's a difficult challenge on the plane with little screens and all sorts of things. And everybody knows the halacha lo b'shamayim, so everything is permissible up there. And he got on the plane, and he made up his mind he's going to learn. And he was sitting there learning. He was sitting there learning on the plane, learning. And a young lady was on the plane. She sees, hey, there's a guy's a masvid, young lady, that she thinks this guy might be an appropriate shidduch. She's looking for a serious ben Torah who's going to sit and learn. And she's watching the guy. Didn't stop learning for a minute. Mom's the whole time he learned on the plane. Yep, she didn't know what to do. There's an avrech couple sitting on the plane, and she approached them, and she said to them, maybe you could find out some information for me. I'd like to pass it on to Shadchan, which she did, and 2 weeks later, they were engaged. Bocher wasn't even thinking about a shidduch, and the girl was rich. That's one of the pirozem ba'olam hazeh. So the rule is there's a protocol. And what if she would have broken protocol? She's desperate. She wants to meet the guy, and you approach her. That's something you don't do. Not for a shidduch, not for anything else, not for kiruv. You don't do it. It's something that you simply don't do. There's another couple who was on a plane. Derech Agav, guy was on a plane in Yeshiva Bocher, and they didn't have his meal. They didn't have his kosher meal. He said, what am I going to do? So, the stewardess brings him an orange or an apple or something like that, and he's sitting there, and all of a sudden, about 5 minutes later, the stewardess comes over, and she brings him part of a kosher meal, the main course from a kosher meal. He said, I thought you didn't have. He says, no, but she sent it up. He looks back, about 4 rows back, there's a young lady, a frum girl, and she just passed it on like that. She realized that he was hungry, she passed it up. Okay, very nice, a very nice chesed. When they got off the plane, they met at the carousel. And the bacher didn't know what to do because still, there's protocol. He just said to her, but it'd be a mention. He says, listen, I want to thank you very much. It was very nice. My name is Chaim Goldstein. Thank you very much. He says, my name is, Basia Cohn. And they looked at each other. And she says to me, your name sounds familiar. He said, yeah, yours does too. And she says, I know what it was. We were once suggested as a shidduch for each other. And you turned it down. Why did you turn it down? That's not a good situation for any young man to find himself in at any stage in life. And so he looks at her and he says, well, I heard you have wonderful, terrific, wonderful things about you, but I also heard that you go to a seminary, a high-powered seminary, it's very intellectually focused. I'm looking for a girl who's more focused on doing chesed. He said, well, I guess you heard wrong, didn't you? And of course, the two of them got married, lived happily ever after. Now, I don't want you to take the wrong, the Musar Haskell here is that not if you're looking for a shidduch and get on a plane. That is not. If you took that out of here, you got the absolutely wrong message. The message here is that there's protocol. In Yiddishkeit, there's something called protocol. And there's protocol. And in kiruv v'chokim, very much there's protocol. And one of the protocols is, and this is where people stumble very often, all in the name of a mitzvah, all in the name of kiruv, they cross certain lines, which we're going to elaborate on in a little while. They cross certain lines which should never, ever, ever be crossed. So the common question people ask is, yeah, but what do I do if I see I get a text message or a phone call or something from, or my sister tells me she knows about a girl who needs kiruv and this, that, the other. What do I do? The answer is always remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves them more than you do. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares about them more than you do. And we are not God's policemen. It's not our job to make sure. That's not our goal. Our goal is to do the Ratzon Hashem. And a person has to be coldly honest, especially in this area of life. What's your real motivation here? Very difficult. I was once going into England at Heathrow Airport. And because I'm a Kohen, so I had certain issues. Back in the day, there were certain issues on flying out of Heathrow to Eretz Yisrael. So I had to route myself through Germany. And I went into Heathrow. I was there I went to England for about a week, and then I was going to fly to Germany, and from Germany catch an El Al flight there. So I took care of certain problems with Tumas Meis. When I got to the passport control, there was a Hindu, about 6'5", huge Hindu, with a huge beard and a tichel. And he was standing there at the counter, and the contrast was striking. And this Hindu takes a look at me, and I don't know why. For some reason, from the get-go, he did not like me. It was clear he did not like me. I don't know. Could be it's the epic meeting of the God believer versus the cow worshiper, and he knew it. I don't know, but I only know that he did not like me from the get. And he took a look at my thing. He said, "How long are you going to be here?" I said, "About a week." "Why are you going through Germany?" Germany was a haven for terrorists at a certain point. He said to me, why are you going through Germany? So first I had to write down on my card what my occupation is. So I wrote down, I'm a teacher. So he said to me, what do you teach? So I said, Torah. So he looked at me, he kind of, because he didn't know what Torah was. He said, what do you teach? I said, Torah. So he goes, why are you going to Germany? So I said, well, because there's a problem with Tumas Meis, and our poskim that are mekil on a poseach tefach, but not everybody agrees with it, and the poskim are mekil coming out of Germany, and therefore I find to get around to circumvent the problem of Tuma, it makes it easier. And the guy looked at me, we stared at each other for about 3, 4, 5 seconds, probably the best 5 seconds of my life. Because he was staring at me, and I was just looking at him, and he didn't understand a word I said. I knew he didn't understand a word I said. He knew that I knew they didn't know a word I said. And the guy, he couldn't, and he just looked at me and said, He said, what do you teach? I said, Torah. So he stamped my passport, I said, go in. Now this is a guy who ostensibly thought that I was a terrorist. And yet, he wasn't willing to be moda al ha'emes. He doesn't know first thing what I'm talking about. He has no idea what I'm talking about. Person gets involved, there's certain times in life where it's difficult to admit the truth. Sometimes for the sake of kiruv, a person says, yeah, but what about the neshama, and what about this? And at the end of the day, let HaKadosh Baruch Hu worry about neshamas. That's the first rule in kiruv v'chokim. What do you do if it happens to come your way? The answer is get a contact number. Get a contact number, find a contact number, always have with you a contact number that works for kiruv v'chokim for non-males, and somehow get that contact number through your sister, through your friend, get it to the young lady. There should be absolutely no interaction. That is the first rule in kiruv v'chokim, only for somebody who wants to do the Ratzon Hashem. I once walked into a orthodontist, a guy who makes false teeth, and he makes the false teeth and the dentures and everything. There's a big sign on the wall that said, only floss those teeth you want to keep, right? So I'm only talking to those who want to do the Ratzon Hashem. Those who don't want, that's something else. I'm only talking to one who wants to do the Ratzon Hashem in kiruv. This is the first rule, and that's where it has to stay. Person has to know, what's the goal? What is the goal here? Is the goal to be mekarev people? No, that's not the goal. The goal is not to mekarev. The goal is not to teach Torah. The goal is to do the Ratzon Hashem. And at that moment, the person always has to identify, tap into, and know precisely what is the Ratzon Hashem. And sometimes the Ratzon Hashem is walk away. That's the Ratzon Hashem. Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want us to help him. He wants us to do what we are obligated to do. Many years ago, I was driving from Chicago to Columbus, Ohio. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the United States. I'm sure you have. I don't know if you've ever been in Columbus. And we're going from Chicago to Columbus. Now, Chicago is over here. Columbus is over here. I got instructions from my father how to drive. It's about a 7-hour drive. I got instructions from my father how to drive. I was young. I was about 22, 23, 24. And there are about 16 lanes when you leave Chicago. Chicago's a real city. And there are about 16 lanes when you leave Chicago until you get to that dirt path that leads into Columbus. There are about 16 lanes over there. And my dad's explaining, well, you got to catch the third one from the right, and then there's a quick get to the fifth one and make a quick right turn, and the whole thing. And at a certain point, he said to me, you got it? I said, yeah, we both knew I didn't. I had trouble being modal MS, right? So we were afraid, my wife and I were young and adventurous. We decided we'll drive. It was about 11 o'clock at night. We leave Chicago, and I had that sinking feeling that I did not catch the right turn. Okay, we drove on, and also we see a sign that says, Detroit, 235 miles. That's bad. Because Columbus is here, Chicago's here, Columbus is here, Detroit is here. Now, I didn't know what to do, so I pulled into a truck stop. It was late at night, about midnight, in a truck stop off the road somewhere on the way to between Chicago and Detroit. I was not happy. And I pulled in. There's a lady behind the counter working in a truck stop at 12 o'clock at night, you can imagine. And I said to her, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to Columbus? So she said, well, where are you coming from? So I said, we're coming from, well, she says, you know what, I don't know. She says, Roy, and she calls one of the truck drivers. Truck driver comes out. He looks like he stepped right off the cover of Truck Drivers magazine. He had the mutton chop sideburns, with a beer in one hand, the second beer, and the third in his mouth. And Roy comes over. They're all named Roy. And Roy comes over. He says, Roy, this guy's coming. This guy wants to know how to get to Columbus. So Roy says, well, where are you coming from? So I said, we're coming from Chicago. He said, Chicago? Chicago? Boy, are you messed up, right? And he just laughed, and he called all the other truckers. He said, Roy! He called all the other truckers. Roy! They all came in, and everybody had a great laugh over here at the fact that we were so messed up. So I've always held, at least I got a Musar, we made it eventually, but at least there's a Musar lesson, I think, that a person has to know what your path is in life, where you're trying to get to, and how you're trying to go there. And whatever your goal is, you have to make sure that your means to getting to the goal is the correct route. And if it's not the correct route, then to quote that Roy from so many years ago, boy, are you messed up. Because that's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you. Moshe Rabbeinu was sent, it's an absolutely mind-boggling concept. Moshe Rabbeinu was sent to bring out Klal Yisrael. The Geula is going to come, the Medrash says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, only through you, there's nobody else. Only, if you don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. No Geula for Klal Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu is sent by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to go bring out Klal Yisrael. And what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? I have to go ask Yisrael. I have to ask my father-in-law, I promise, I got to get Rishus. Because that's what protocol demands. And what if Yisrael would have said no? Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't have gone to Mitzrayim. Because Yisrael said no. That was what he had to do at that moment. What about the Geula? And what about the people? And what about the kiruv? And what about the Torah? What about the Ma'amad Har Sinai? It's not your issue. It's not your issue. Your issue is Ratzon Hashem. Ratzon Hashem is ask your shver whether or not you could go. That's your issue, at whatever the expense is, because we don't judge based on what the results are going to be. We judge on what is the Ratzon Hashem right now at this moment. Idea number 2 is very important when you're in kiruv v'chokim, and again, nowadays it's kiruv krovim as well. It's everybody who a person could be. I don't even use the word kiruv as much as the word chinuch in general. But if you want to be mashpia, you want to draw somebody near the beauty of Yiddishkeit, I think the first rule is that you cannot or should not come across as being concerned for the person's neshama. Don't come across as being concerned for their soul. Come across as being concerned for them as a person. People who sense, I'm going to be another one of his mitzvah statistics. He's going to be, what's the word? They're going to missionize me, and it's another feather in his eternal cap. And people don't like that. People want to know that you care about them as an individual. Then, once you can do that, then you can use all underhanded, devious, and sneaky methods in order for them to get but they have to feel, as a famous college coach once said, the key to this business is sincerity. Once you can fake that, you got it made. Right? We're not looking to fake it. A person has to feel, Chazal say, have a mitalmidav shel Aaron, oiv shalom roshom, ohev v'sabrios u'mekarvan l'Torah. Why was Aaron HaKohen successful in being Mekarev people? Ohev v'sabrios, because he genuinely was ohev v'sabrios. And the people felt it. K'mayim upon him, they felt his heart with their heart. You care about me as a person, then I'm interested. You've opened up my heart. I'm interested in listening to you. Oives abrios, mekorban laTorah, you got to be oives abrios. And Aaron was an oives abrios. I heard about a man was given a present by his brother. He had a wealthy brother. He gave him a birthday present, a brand new car. I wish my brother was here to hear this. Gave him a present, a brand new car. Guy gets into the car, a Lexus, and he's driving around. He's so happy with his new car. And he's driving around. Real new car. He's got that new car smell, everything about it. He's driving around and he sees an 11-year-old kid on the street who he knows from around the neighborhood. So he opens up the window and says, "Hey, Johnny, you want to ride in the car? Brand new car." Johnny says, "Hey, yeah." And he gets in the car and he starts driving little Johnny around. And he says to him, "You know where I got this car? My brother gave me this car." Johnny goes, "Wow. I wish I could be a brother like that." Not what you expected, is it? And it's not what I said. I wish I could be a brother like that. And Johnny said to him, "You know what, could you drive me over to my house for a second? I want to give my brother a ride." He says, "Sure." He's happy to show off his new Lexus. He drives over to the car. Johnny goes in, and he brings down his brother who's wheelchair bound, brings him down the stairs. He says, "Tom, I want you to enjoy the ride in the car. Now I'm going to be a brother like that." That's what people have to feel from us. People have to feel from us, we care about them as people. That's number one. Number two, there was an Israeli Baal Tshuva. They once asked him, what caused you to become frum? He said he was fry. Fry is an egg. And he had done the usual thing. He had been in Israel, raised in Israel, eventually went to the army, and he went traveling and almost fulfilled the Israeli dream by going to live in America. And he was just in that shlav between being in Tibet and actually bringing the Israeli dream to fulfillment. And at a certain point, he just felt empty. And he started thinking back. He's from Tel Aviv. He started thinking back every morning when he went to high school. People in Tel Aviv are busy. They're moving back and forth on the street. Everybody's walking. Nobody said there was one elderly man with a talus bag under his hand every morning as they passed each other. And the man looked at him and said, he smiled and said, "Good morning." That was all he did, every morning. He said that when he was about 24, 25, and he started searching, he made an association between that hello and that talus bag. And as a result of that hello and that talus bag, he decided, if that's a Jew who cares about me, and he's from, that's what I want to be. I want to become from. That's what people have to feel from us. There's another Rav who got into a cab, Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein. Rav Yashiv suddenly gets into a cab. Cab driver's got long hair. He's got an earring, but he notices the cab driver's got a yarmulke on his head. The cab driver smiles, looks at him, and Rav Zilber says, "Look, the yarmulke looks a little out of place." And the cab driver knows that he's got a Rav here who's looking at his yarmulke, and he smiles and he says, "Watch this." Starts unbuttoning his shirt. He's got tzitzis underneath. Rav Zilber says, "My high." He says, "Look, there was a certain rabbi a Rav got into my cab, and we had been driving around all day. I had taken him to a few different places. And towards the end of the day, I dropped him off in front of his house. And he said to me, 'Listen, you haven't eaten all day. I want you to come in and have some supper in my house.' And I was like, said, 'Leave the meter running. I'll pay you the meter, but you have to have something to eat.' So I went into his house and I ate. And we came out and he paid me the full meter. He paid me my fare. He paid me the full meter. I said to myself, if that's a Jew could treat another human being like that. And I'm on my way. It's a yarmulke, it's tzitzis, soon my hair and the earrings going to go. I'm going to go all the way. Because he feels that he's oives abrios. If he's oives abrios, then you're mekorban laTorah. There are no great tricks. So I'll tell you one more story before the next one. There was a bacher in a yeshiva. It said, listen to the story. It's an unbelievable story. It's a mind-boggling story. Absolutely mind-boggling story. Bacher was in the yeshiva, very uninspired. And at a certain point, he said to the Rosh Yeshiva, I've had enough. One of the Israeli yeshivas says, I've had enough. It's not for your learning. It's not for his whole frum thing's not for me. I'm out of here. And he leaves the yeshiva. And if Bacher leaves the yeshiva, the next thing that's going to happen is you fall in with the wrong friends and the bottomless pit. About a week and a half later, he comes back to the yeshiva. He sits down, goes into the basement. He sits down, he starts learning like a house on fire. Learning the first day. Okay, Rosh Yeshiva is watching him, doesn't understand what happened. Comes back to the second day, what happened? Learning away. Comes in the third day, he says, okay, Yitzi, what's going on? He says, what do you mean what's going on? He says, you left here totally uninspired, totally unmotivated. You're back here, you're sitting and learning. What happened to you? He says, Rabbi, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. I had no plans on being a Ben Torah. I had no plans on staying from. That's the truth. I left the yeshiva, and I was walking, one day I was in Gula, and I heard yelling. And I look up, and I see that there's some seminary girl is yelling at a cab driver, he's yelling at her, something about the fare. So I saw her throw money down on the cab seat, and she slammed the door closed. And the driver took off. But she was wearing some sort of wraparound thing, but had gotten caught in the door. And it left her in a very, very embarrassing situation. It's one of those situations in life where you're paralyzed. You don't even know what to do. And it was horrible, absolutely horrible. All of a sudden, two frum bachrim came running towards her without looking at her. They took off their jackets, threw their jackets over her, and ran off in the other direction. I said, Rebbe, if a Ben Torah has that sensitivity for other people, I'm going to be a Ben Torah. Only this abrius of a karvan Torah. That's the rule. There are no shortcuts, there are no gimmicks. People have to sense on us that that's what we care about. We care about them as a person, not that we're chalking them up as another statistic in our neshama ledger. The same Mishnah says, Oivas abrios umekarvan laTorah. Bring them to Torah. You don't bring Torah to them. We don't compromise Torah, and we don't change Torah, all for the sake, and this goes on all the time, by the way, where people, I got a great idea for kiruv. If we just cut out that thing called shatnez, we'll get them, it'll be okay. Or if we just, forget about chaylev, let's have a chaylev barbecue. Imagine no, it doesn't work that way. Mekarvan laTorah. A person says, yeah, but I'm not interested in religion where that's restricted. People ask you questions all the time. People ask, why is it this way? You know what the answer is? People ask me all the time. What do I say to somebody who asks me why we can't or why we could or how do we know? What do I say to them? You know what the answer is? Simple. You tell them the truth. You tell them the truth. Sometimes you don't have to tell them every shitas arishonim. Right? You don't have to say every shitas arishonim on Yefas Toar and on killing Amalek and everything. You don't have to say every shitas arishonim. But if a guy says, is it true that you have to kill Amalek? What am I going to say? No, it's not true. It's not my Torah to lie about. Is it true? Is it true? It is true. Do I have to say that to him? I could change the subject. I go, hey, let's talk about kibbut ava'im today. Right? I could do that. But he's going to ask somebody else anyway. And if I would say to him, yes, there is a mitzvah in the Torah. It says openly, Mocho Simcha Zecher Amalek. Well, don't you think it's unfair this? Okay, so you could sit down and have a discussion with him and talk it over. But you're not going to get anything. It's not your Torah to change. And it's not your Torah to water down. Umekarvan laTorah. This is the Torah. You don't like it? There's nothing I can do about it. There's a halacha called borer. You don't like it? There's nothing I can't sit at my shop. Well, you could borer. I don't have that authority. And therefore, mekarvan laTorah. We don't water down. Umekarvan laTorah. It has to be gentle. It has to be done sweetly. It has to be done in the right atmosphere. But we don't have. It's not our Torah to tamper with. It's very important to remember that. Rav Kirsch spoke about even technology, about what to use. I'm not going into technology right now, but always keep that in mind. Number two, we do not make any halachic decisions on our own. This is of vital importance when it comes to kiruv v'chokim. There's so many halachic shilas that come up. I had a guy once came up to me. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I was in the middle of my morning coffee. In the middle of my coffee, you know what? It was my second cup, and I still wasn't totally fueled. And a guy comes over to me and he says, are you Rabbi Kaplan? I said, yeah. He goes, you're a Kohen, aren't you? I said, yeah. He says, well, my mother's a divorcee and she married my father's a Kohen. Doesn't that make me something? So whatever happened to I forgot Yalav Yovel, do I have to say Shemon Esrei again? He says, doesn't that make me something? I said, well, listen, if it's as you say it is, and if your mother was really divorced, and if your father is really a Kohen, and they really got married, and then it does make you something, but you should really speak to a halachic authority. He says, what does it make me? I said, well, there's a status in halacha. He says, well, what's it called? I said, it's called a chol. He says, oh, good, that's what I thought. Somebody else told me that. No, I walked off into the sunset. That was it. Now, I would not answer, if a guy says, am I a chol or not a chol? Go speak to a posek. I can't tell you a chol. One of the first shilos I was asked when I started here about 25 to 30 years ago, I don't remember what it was. One of the first questions I was asked, the guy came up, I think the first question, he doesn't like his Hebrew name. He wants to know if he can use his English name. So, sometimes people are so frum. You get a guy who's so frum. He is so frum. He throws stones at cars on Tuesdays. That's how frum he is. And he comes in, this is the guy, can I use my Hebrew name? Oh, my English name. Osir. Really? Osir. Who told you? How do you know it's Osir? Chayv Skila. Who told you? For using a Hebrew name? You touched your shoes before Chayv Skila. Who told you that? Where did you make that up? Guy says, can I listen to non-Jewish music? Osir, Shagitz, Aroy. Who told you? Who said? How do you know? How do you know which music it is? How do you know what his needs are? How do you know where he's holding? How do you know? Where did you get that authority to paskin like that? Whether for Lakula or Lachumra. And then I went and I asked a halachic authority. Halachic authority told me that Rav Aaron Kaplan referred to one of his top Talmidim by his English name. Top Talmidim, his closest Talmid, talked about referring. You wouldn't have thought that. And Rav Aaron Kaplan was from, by the way. I don't know if you know, he was from. And he referred to one of his closest Talmidim by his English name. How do you know? Can't use your... Who told you? Maybe you don't want to use your English name. And maybe you don't like your English name. And maybe it's distasteful to you. But what's distasteful to you doesn't mean that it's halach and shulchan aruch. Doesn't mean it's awesome. Same thing when it comes to any psak. Anything having to do with yichus. And you get all sorts of yichus questions nowadays. People who think they're Jewish, people who don't think they're Jewish. A million and one yichus. I told you a shaila, I think I mentioned last year. I'm sure you all remember it. And I think we mentioned last year. No, I wasn't here last year. Sorry. So maybe we should talk about MS today. So there was a, what do you call it? There's a halachic shaila. A young lady comes to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein's Zatzal. Says to Rabbi Moshe, my mother was married to an American soldier stationed in England. They had a chuppah in Kedushin with a Rav, 100% kosher chuppah Kedushin. My parents split up, they had a civil divorce, and my mother married another man, and I'm a Jewish man, and I come from that union. I have since become a Balas Tshuva, and today I'm engaged to a Ben Torah. My friend said to me, there might be some issue here, and I better speak to you real quick. Is there a problem with me marrying him? So Moshe said to her, tell me the shaila again. She said, my mother was married with chuppah kedushin. They had a civil divorce, not a get. She married another man. I was born from that union. And today I'm engaged to a Ben Torah. Is there a problem? Rabbi Moshe said, come back to me in 24 hours. She came back 24 hours later. Rabbi Moshe said, Mazel Tov zol zayin mitglik, marry him, you should build a bayis them and be Yisrael. Thank you very much. She leaves. The Mekuravim were there. They said, Rabbi, we heard what you heard. Yes. That's a mamzeres l'mahadrin min mahadrin. So Moshe said, that's certainly what it sounds like. That's certainly what it sounds like. But in the last 24 hours, I had somebody contact the United States Pentagon. Yes, there was a soldier stationed in England, and yes, he was married to her mother. But at the same time, he had a wife and 2 daughters in the United States, which she did not know about clearly. Otherwise, she would have never married him. And since she did not know about it, the entire first marriage is a mekach tos. There was never a marriage, therefore she's kosher l'mad. Could you imagine somebody paskening that shaila on their own? Could you imagine a religious Mr. Magoo like that, the damage that he could do? Leaving a trail of disaster because he thought, well, I know the halacha. And the rule is, you're going to get all sorts of shilas in kiruv. Oh, I could write a book. I did write a book. But there are all sorts of, no, the good ones I left out. There are some doozy shilas when it comes to kiruv. And I want to tell you something, don't touch them. Don't touch them. Find a posek. That's a major rule when it comes to kiruv v'chokim. Had another guy said to me, also in the early days, I wasn't ready for this. The guy comes over to me, says to me, he hates his father. The father doesn't know where he is. He hasn't spoken to his father in 3 years. Doesn't even know his father's in yeshiva. He hates his father so much that when his father dies, he doesn't want to say Kaddish for him. Well, one benefit is at least they won't have a fight in the shul on the yard site. Who says who goes in 40 Amud? So, I wasn't ready for this. So I said, you better speak to halachic authority. He went to halachic authority. The halachic authority said to him that if you really, a responsible posek in Klal Yisrael, he said, if you really hate your father so much that you don't want to say Kaddish, then al pi halacha, you don't have to. You're not allowed to do anything to expedite the death process. But if he does die of natural causes or however it is that he dies, then you do not have to say Kaddish. The end of the story was that he took a hatchet and he turned his father's car into a convertible, which involved the police and everything else. You understand what's riding on these shilas that we get. Therefore, the rule is don't paskin, and especially in the areas where it involves what we spoke about earlier, when a person wants to cross certain lines. Number 3 or 4, never say anything that you don't understand. Sometimes a person asks you a question, how do we know Torah is b'Sinai? And you give them a whole drasha which you yourself don't understand. And he ended off by saying, well, I really can't explain it, but it's amazing, right? Or how do we know that the soul, that there's reincarnation? Well, I once heard a talk from so-and-so, and I can't really explain it, but it's amazing. Don't say amazing things, and don't be amazing means you don't understand it. That's what amazing means. Don't say anything that you truly don't. If you don't know, you don't understand, you say to the person, listen, you know what? That's a very good question. Let's research it together. And that gives you a chance to draw the person near, and you start looking up the sources, and you can actually do something. A person has to know, I don't know is an answer. And a person must use that answer much better because sincerity comes across. And if you come across sounding that way, the person says, well, you don't really know either. And they sense it. They're human beings. I once had a young lady at my table. Sister became a balas tshuva. And she was also very, very, the only thing stopping her from throwing the stones on Shabbos, she probably couldn't lift them. Otherwise she would have. But she was your typical rah-rah balas tshuva. And I remember she brought her notebook to the table to say Dvar Torah. I was an Avrech in Kolo at the time. She brought her notebook to the table to say Dvar Torah. And she was just rah-rah. And then her sister, she brought her sister, the feminist vegetarian, Save the Whale person, brought her to the house. And she was completely fried. So it all started out with her sister telling me, did you read the book? Just to give you an idea of who the sister was, she said, I read the book, A Tzaddik in Our Time. The story about Rabbi. She said, I read the book, he's the most selfish person I ever read about. How so? She goes, well, you believe that every mitzvah you do, you get rewarded, don't you? I said, yeah. So, well, he did a lot of mitzvahs because he wanted the reward, therefore he's selfish. So, the profundity of her logic, I was having trouble following. And I think my first, I don't remember, going back a long time, it was my second year in Koilel, I would say, and I just remember it, and I just said to her something like, well, why don't you be so selfish? You should be so selfish too. And we don't know his motivation, and there are people who do things, l'shem shemayim, v'chulu, v'chulu, v'chulu. So that was the personality. And we're sitting at the Shabbos table, she and her sister, my wife and myself, were sitting there, and she asked me a question, and I answered whatever I knew at the time. She asked me, I answered, and she turns to her sister, and she says, why does he sound like he knows what he's talking about, and you sound like a tape recorder? So she said right in front of us. The answer is Pasha, because she did sound like a tape recorder. That was the answer. She's tactless, and she's absolutely, crude and tactless. But it comes across. Even somebody fry senses, do you know what you're talking about, or you don't know what you're talking about? Therefore, never say something that you're not sure of. Number 5, never make irresponsible claims. This is something that people stumble on all the time, where you want to do anything you can, you're worried about somebody else's neshama, you're worried about their eternity, and you want more than anything else to draw them near. And then you say, you know what, if you become frum, you're going to get rich, and you'll be healthy, and everything else. So, I can tell you from personal experience, being frum doesn't necessarily make you rich. There's even a chazal which to this day I don't understand. I've never understood. The chazal say that a person could learn Torah shelo lishma, Shema Yikare Rabbi, for money. Yeah, they're all exactly where are those positions where we get to learn Torah and get rich? I'm not sure where that is, but a person has the right. A person has the right. You could do a shelo lishma, but it's utterly irresponsible to tell somebody become frum in everything will be good. And people do this, and it's utterly irresponsible. It's a misrepresentation. There are plenty of frum people who struggle. Rahman al-San, there are plenty of people with tsaris. There are frum people who have. What you could do, and what you should do, is tell a person the emphasis. The emphasis is that if you make a commitment to Yiddishkeit, to Torah Yiddishkeit, you will benefit in Olam Hazeh. Emphasize the benefits of Olam Hazeh. People are always worried about Olam Haba and reward, and that's how we're perceived on the outside. We're perceived as giving up all good things for some sort of reward that's promised later in the future. That's a misrepresentation. Tell a person, what would you like in life? You'd like a nice family, wouldn't you? You'd like to feel fulfilled, wouldn't you? Every human being would like that. A frum person who's committed to emes and to a cause enhances his chances of having a family. He enhances his chances of having fulfillment. He enhances his chances of pleasure and enjoyment in Olam Hazeh. You can't guarantee it because there are plenty of people who've made the turnover and they come back and they say, you know what? I was happier the other way. I had money, I had a better relationship, I had better this and better that. So it's an irresponsible claim to make. You are not allowed to make that claim. The claim that you can make and what you must tell people is, we live life based on percentages. And what are the percentages, the chances for a person when you invest based on percentages. When a person is ill, they go to the doctor because he's got the best chance of curing you. There's nothing that's for sure. A person wants to avoid a 75% or 60% divorce statistic, so if he was smart, he would do the thing that enhances his chances. He would make a commitment to a way of life where the divorce statistics in our community have skyrocketed to about 5%. If a person wants to really increase his chances, that's what he should do. The people in the Torah community, and I've had guys tell me this, you take a look at them, these do not look like unhappy people. The people that are in a yeshiva, the people they're in contact with Rabbi in this yeshiva and other yeshivas, they feel, yeah, these are people who are happy and fulfilled and contented. You want to increase your chances? That's what you could do. But to go and make an irresponsible claim that if you will do it, it's going to work out, everybody's going to live happily ever after, that is not your right, and it's frankly irresponsible. Finally, the concern for results is natural. Every human being wants to see results of what they do. In Torah, mitzvahs, it's not our job. Our job is not the results. Our job is the effort that we put in. That's our job. And that's what we have to stay focused on. That's our goal. Rabbi Zilberberg, Shlita, heard him once say that when Yaakov and Esav were wrestling, it says, Vayovek Ishimo ad olos hashachar. It was there before the song, by the way. Vayovek Ishimo ad olos hashachar. They kicked up dirt in this wrestling match. Says the Medrash, how high up did that dirt go? Says the Medrash, that dirt went up, that avak went all the way up to the Kisei HaKavod. Went all the way up. The dirt from that wrestling match flew up to the Kisei HaKavod. Who cares? Who's interested? What does that concern me? It went up to the Kisei HaKavod. What's the nafka mina? How does that, why are Chazal telling us that? Said Reb Meyer, the answer is, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if we were worried about results, you know what the Medrash should have said? Yaakov tossed the malach all the way up to the Kisei HaKavod. That would be a victory. He won. Here, you take him back. Right? Would have thrown him up. It's not what it says. The malach he wrestled with, the dirt went up to the Kisei HaKavod. Because what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us is not the results. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is the effort and the struggle that kicks up the dirt. That's our job. Our tafkid is to make the effort. Our tafkid is to make the effort properly. Our tafkid is to do everything we can in our power to show other people the beauty of Torah in a Torah life. It's not our job and it's not our concern what the results are. Those results are HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us. Every one of us, we should make the right efforts and we should have the right outlook and the right hashkafa in our endeavors to be Mekar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless all of our endeavors with Hatzlacha. Amen.